Hello Fromily! I am confident that for you, just like for me, From has quickly become one of the most captivating shows on television. It stands out with a unique and original story, not an adaptation of a book, comic, video game or any pre-existing material. It's not a remake, sequel or prequel, it's a pure creative vision.
You're goddamn right.
But what truly sets it apart is the way it weaves together a rich tapestry of mythology, history, literature, mysteries and riddles. At times, the show feels like an intricate puzzle, so complex that it seems almost impossible to piece together what's really happening. It can leave you feeling utterly lost, like you're fumbling in the dark. And honestly, I might have given up hope of ever understanding it if it weren't for Jade's words in Season 2. You remember him saying to Tabitha about chaos theory and that everything is connected. Also in this scene, he was talking about finding two pieces of a puzzle that connect. In this moment, it felt like the creators are talking to us, telling us just a little patience, please, we have a plan, trust us. And now, at last, we have that crucial piece of a puzzle that Jade was talking about, a key revelation that just might show us the path forward and help us make sense of the chaos. Wait a second, some of you may think right now, Igor, I have seen this video, you've done this theory already, and you are correct. I did this video, but it was blocked by Paramount Plus when it reached somewhere around 150,000 views. So I had to remake it and try to avoid all the copyrighted material that I used in the original video, because I wanted to emphasize my ideas and arguments using the words of the characters instead of retelling you what you already know in the scenes. Anyway, the original video is still available in my Patreon for my sponsors, because there they don't really care about copyrighted material, and here I'm gonna do my best to make this video still as entertaining and as interesting as possible and try to avoid, of course, the copyright block. Anyway, you came here looking for answers, and I have some answers for you. It's gonna be a long journey, but I promise you, I'm gonna get you to the destination. There are two distinct approaches to constructing a theory. The first is to start with an idea and then search for evidence to support it. The second, and arguably more compelling method, is to simply gather information, collecting piece after piece until that eureka moment strikes and the bigger picture begins to emerge. Personally, I favor the latter approach. It feels more genuine, more transparent to the audience, and dare I even say it, more scientific. Yet even the most intricate theory requires an anchor, a foundational connection to hold everything together. As Jade put it, that first connection is essential. And now we finally have ours, the pivotal conversation between the boy in white and Christopher. Let's summarize. The answers to the end are at the beginning. It started with the children and with what the others did to them. They loved and trusted the others. The children are born in the dark. The children were murdered in the dark. But someone who loved them told them a story. And this story gave them hope. And they poured the hope into the roots that made the symbol that became the tree, the faraway tree. And in order to save the children, you have to go through the tree. There are theories suggesting that the beginning is the year 1506, as hinted at the lighthouse. However, I'm not entirely convinced of this, since one of the years engraved on the wall is 1864, the same number found on the bottle tree, which now we know is a code for musical notes. It could be just a coincidence that those numbers repeat, but I highly doubt it. From the conversation between the boy in white and Christopher, we also know that it started with the children. They are the beginning, making them our best chance to determine the right period of when this story began. Now, the only tangible reference to a period is their clothing, so I decided to focus on those two images, since the boys here are wearing underwear that is not common in our time, and it's called a union suit. This type of garment became very popular among men and children during the late 19th century. This is our first clue that the beginning is actually the Civil War era. but it's definitely not enough yet. So if it's not enough, let's dive deeper. Our clues are the buildings of Fromville, the visions of our heroes, Miranda's drawings, and now after the end of season 3 we also have Jade's and Tabitha's memory.
Anghkoey.
Let us start with the building. And the first one is obviously the church, that looks like the oldest building in town. It's definitely older than the rest of the houses. There is an argument for it being built even way before the Civil War period, since in the original draft of the script it's described as very old building. But you know, very old is kinda subjective. Everything can be very old if you look at it at a certain angle. So I asked ChatGPT to identify the period without giving it any context, and I was kinda surprised. The simple yet sturdy stone construction suggests it could be an old settler-built structure meant to endure over time, and it can be a community meeting hall or settlers building. Another interesting thing here is look at the way the bricks are laid in the church. Now let's try to compare it to the other old structures in Fromville. We have the basement of the colony house, the cellar where Fatima was held, and the ruins where Martin is chained, which probably was a jail or a dungeon of some sort. As you can see, the building techniques look pretty much the same, so we can safely assume that they are from the same period. All of the buildings are identified as settler built, but just one glimpse in the colony house hints that it was probably from the Civil War period. Another interesting observation is that Fatima's cellar leads to the caves, and when Julie was in the story world, she found a door that also led straight to the caves from this dungeon. Also in Victory's memory of the boy in white and Christopher, there is a door in the church cellar, which kinda begs another question: if the same cellar where Julie and Elgin found the Polaroid, there was also a door? Even if there isn't a door, there's still a connection that cannot be ignored. There's obviously something that connects all those buildings. This is not the only connection. The faraway trees will take you either to the lighthouse, or to the cellar where Fatima was held, or to the jail where Martin is chained, or even to the basement of the church, which also implies that the magical trees of this place are connected to those first buildings. Now the link between those buildings and the period of Civil War becomes clearer and clearer, but it's still not all. There's also a new village that was discovered in season 3 that kinda looks like it was taken straight from a mission in The Witcher 3.
Fuck.
So I had to figure out what is this period here, and I kid you not, when I asked ChatGPT, without giving it any context as usual, this is an answer that I got. Late 1700s to early 1800s, these cabins resemble the types of homes built by early settlers and pioneers in remote or undeveloped areas. They could also represent homes from the Homestead Act era, 1860s and onward, when settlers moved westward in the United States. So I was kinda surprised that it's not the village of the three witches from the acclaimed video game, but something that is related to pilgrims and the first settlers, which right away made me think about Miranda's drawings of pilgrims that has to be also connected to the very first cycle. Look, I know that pilgrims came way before the Civil War, I know that, but I also know they were still existing during this period and they were still active. And we have to remember, everything started with the Anghkoey children, and they are wearing clothes that became popular somewhere in the 1860s. So it's two scenarios here. Either everything started during the Civil War era, or the creators didn't really give a crap about what clothes to put on the children as long as they look, you know, old-ish. So whatever you decide for yourself here. There's also this shed where Boyd was hiding Fatima, where he was hiding Sarah, where he wanted to hide Frank. Wow, Boyd is really into hiding something in the shed, huh? And of course the lighthouse, which from what I gather can be actually a magical building that exists maybe only in the story dimension. But still, we know that it uses Fresnel lens, which became very popular in, you guessed it, United States in 1860, right before the Civil War period. And if you look at the way the stones are laid here, it's the same like in the buildings I mentioned before. If all this is not enough for you to be convinced that it all started during the Civil War, we also have Jade's vision of a Civil War soldier, of a man drinking blood wearing clothes from the same period, and we have Tabitha's dream of a little girl being attacked by something scary, which also resembles the same period of time. There's also this screaming dude, but it's just probably one of the middle reincarnations. So it all started with the children during the Civil War period, and they were born in the dark and killed in the dark. The question of where they were murdered is pretty much solved. It was in the caves as we have seen it in Jade's vision, but can we assume that they were also born in the caves? It is possible since their hair implies they weren't getting sufficient nutrition and vitamin D, and it can be explained with them living and growing in the caves. However, we know also that one of the sacrificed kids was Jade's and Tabitha's, who are supposed to be the good guys.
Because one of them was ours. She was our daughter.
And I cannot imagine a probable scenario where the good guys are deciding to raise their kids in the caves, cause it's gonna be good for them or something. So let's come back to our anchor, the conversation between Christopher and the boy in white. The children were betrayed by someone they loved and trusted, and if we can take Fatima's word for their face value, they loved and trusted the slow walkers, or as someone called them Frombies, which I absolutely adore. Now we're gonna have to take a step back and talk a little bit about our smiling Frombies. They were the people close to the children, and they were promised an eternal life if they will sacrifice those children.
Things that come out at night. I saw what they are. They sacrificed their children because it promised them that they would live forever. It's human. I mean, at least it's got the exact same anatomy.
They were once people close to the children, and they were promised an eternal life if they will sacrifice those children. I already have a video dedicated specifically to Frombies, so right now I'm not going to elaborate every detail but focus on one main element of understanding the monsters and their role in this video, and it's the color yellow. Remember the bile that was found in Smiley's body? Or Miranda's drawing of monsters that also have a very dominant yellow presence? It all made me think that the color of the suit of the new big bad that appeared in the end of season 3 is not a coincidence, and he has to be connected to Frombies. Probably he was the it that made them promise of eternal life.
Because it promised them that they would live forever.
So who is he? The most common theory right now is that he is a combination of the King in Yellow from Robert W. Chambers' book, a character that is, by the way, also have been used by H.P. Lovecraft himself, and Dr. Möbius by Norbert Jacques. It's obviously not the characters themselves, but it makes sense that they could serve as an inspiration for From creators. Literature influence has been hinted many times during this show. We had Sarah wearing a daffodil apron with the word Pippleby, hinting on a fictional character, Detective John Appleby, and the book Daffodil Affair. There's also Emily Dickinson poem in the diner, right next to Edgar Allan Poe's, who is, by the way, widely considered the father of modern horror. We also have a quote from his poem Raven on the board where Toby was killed, and like that's not enough, Christy and Kenny are reading the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym, which is the only book that Edgar Allan Poe have ever written. Needless to say that Poe was a huge influence on both Chambers and Lovecraft, so there can be a connection to this mythology of monster-like demigods as a source of inspiration. Also, these red monsters with tentacles in the caves kinda looks like Tulhu. So if the man in yellow is some kind of a demigod, there has to be some sort of a religion around him, right? Let's get back to the caves. And we have here what's probably the origin story of this place written on the walls. Whether it's a real story or it was just made up for the Anghkoey children, it's definitely have a lot of influence on the events of the show. For starters, it has all the key details of the Anghkoey story. It shows us how the first settlers arrived to this place. Just like our heroes, their road was blocked by a tree, and they had to make a detour and find this place. We have also the sacrifice, the sun and the moon, the lighthouse, a hideout with the talismans, and it also has a symbol that I think is the story world, where we already know there is a time loop and we have also symbols of the 3 portals that I assume mean the 3 faraway trees. But let's get back to the religion topic. Right now I want you to focus on 3 important elements on this image: the sun and the moon, the crows and the trees. The trees look exactly the same like the trees on the talisman. Look at those 3 branches here and the 3 branches here. The talisman also has a sun and the moon engraved on them, which means that this was probably created by the same person or by people following the same instructions, same religion or ideas. Another artifact that made me think about a religious concept is Father Catheri's scarf that has a symbol of the talisman: the sun and the moon, the crows, and of course, you guessed it, the trees. As I told you before, we can argue that children born in the dark can mean that they were born in the caves, raised there for the sole purpose of being sacrificed. But I also like to present you a different explanation. Maybe they were all born during a solar eclipse, when people can simultaneously see both the sun and the moon in the sky. Solar eclipse in many mythologies and many religions considered as a mystical, even magical event, and it's not completely far-fetched to consider this magical event part of our Fromville religion that obviously involves also crows, trees, the sun and the moon, and maybe some magical forces and beasts. Now, whatever option you want to believe it, we know that no matter how hard Jade and Tabitha tried, the children were still sacrificed to the deity of this place, whether it's the man in the yellow suit, or he is just an avatar oily tinted of some sort for the tentacle monster that maybe lives underground.
Jesus, what the fuck?
While the children were sacrificed, they were screaming the word Anghkoey, which as per show's lore means remember. So I checked and I checked then a little bit more, and I couldn't find any language where a word Anghkoey or something similar to Anghkoey means remember. So I kind of thought to myself, maybe it's a code word. Let me explain. Ask yourself, what would you do in the situation that Prime Jade and Prime Tabitha found themselves in? There are children on a death row in front of you. You are not gonna be able to save them. They are terrified, and all you can do is tell them a story to make them feel a little better. We had already a hint for this moment in the very first episode. Remember? When Tabitha, Julie and Ethan were driving in the van, we have seen how Ethan was terrified and afraid that Norman was killed by Julie, and Julie telling him, once you're dead, you are gone. Kids, when facing death, need a reassurance, a hope if you will, that it's not over. This theme of an afterlife was repeated several times during the show.
Will we get to see Thomas again?
What?
If we die, will we get to see Thomas again?
Yeah. Are you afraid of dying?
Sure. First I was, and then I got angry. One day I realized just how small life is, how it all goes by so fast. You start to wonder how it could be anything but the beginning of some grand adventure, or maybe it's the middle.
Thermodynamics is that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only change from one form to another.
I think it's safe to assume that Prime Jade and Prime Tabitha told the kids the story about reincarnation and the next life, and gave them a promise, a binding promise, that they will find them in the next life, in the next world. But they may not remember them since they are reborn, and they are in a new body and a new person. And the kids should say the word Anghkoey to spark Jade's and Tabitha's memory of them. Apparently, it's also required for them to play the same lullaby they played them before their death, which is, by the way, called Eternal Lullaby, implying that it was their promise to be with the kids for all eternity. So let's get back to the ritual. The kids are laying on a sacrificial stone and screaming the word Anghkoey. They are demanding to be remembered. And as the boy in white said, they poured their hope into these roots. There are 3 roots. There are 3 faraway trees. And it looks like there are 3 different dimensions in From lore. We have the real world, we have the little pocket universe of Fromville, and we have the story world. The children demanded with their last breath to be remembered, and this immense power created this story world. and simultaneously locked the evil that demanded their sacrifice here in Fromville. The binding promise that Prime Jade and Prime Tabitha gave connected them to the story world, forcing them to be reborn over and over again, and being drawn to this place in order to try once again save the children from their brutal fate. But they were not alone, since the place was born on hope and it feeds on hope. In order to keep existing, it draws people that are full on hope in their threshold moments in the story of their life.
I was with someone, but it's better that he's not around anymore.
I knew all about the divorce and how this whole trip was just one last hurrah before you sat us down to break the news.
I don't know what you did before you got here, but I just sold company for an obscene amount of money based on a quantum computing algorithm with a potential.
I took that job to pay for my degree. Last month, I finally paid off my tuition. I was all set to hand in my notice, and I thought, why not stay a few extra weeks?
On the drive home, I kept thinking, we got a second chance now, you know, to do things right.
And then you saw the tree.
And then we saw the tree.
Did you buy the boat?
Of course we bought you a boat.
Your retirement, Dad. You bought me a boat, baby! Thank you. Dad. Oh!
But hope is not the only trigger for a tree to block your road. Most of the people that arrive to the town from the story world are similar to the people from the original story. Just like Elgin here, who even went through the same torture as the dude with the weird beard here. In the both situations, their eye was taken from them. We also know that Tabitha and Jade used to sing those kids lullabies. One of them was about the three, the same lullaby that Bhakta's grandmother was singing to her.
It's an old nursery rhyme. My grandmother used to sing it to me. They touch, they break, they steal. No one here is free. Here they come for three. Unless you stop the melody.
The lullaby came to life in Fromville, but consider where it originated from. It was Boyd that carried the worms from the story world to Fromville. So the story world is accessible. You can get in through a faraway tree, for example, like Boyd did. You can use an artifact taken from the story world to get back there. And there are also story walkers, sensitive people that know how to listen to this place.
People have all sorts of strange reactions to this place. Dreams, nightmares, weird premonitions, but we don't know why or what it means. Why it happens to some people and not to others. This one girl, Nadia, she used to say that it was like this place was calling out to us, but only some of us were listening closely enough to hear it.
This also can explain why the town looks like it was taken from a child's imagination. We have electricity that works just because, we have moral without a moral. It's all migrated ideas from the story world to Fromville. The caves connect the mystical story world to Fromville's pocket universe, and with every new person that arrives to Fromville, the story world learns something new, but not in detail. So it knows about electricity and phones, but it doesn't know how they work. So we know what happened, we know how this world works, but what does it even mean that in order to save the children you have to go inside the tree? We have seen already Dale trying to do it, didn't work very well. And even Tabitha's journey was not exactly to save the Anghkoey children, or was it? Let's recap. So Tabitha enters the tree and finds herself in one of the prime buildings, the lighthouse. She hears an echo of Anghkoey children, and then the boy in white appears, does a Karate Kid move on her, and she meets Henry, discovers that she is connected to Miranda, the importance of a bottle tree, which eventually brings her with Jade to play the eternal lullaby, which made them remember about their past life and their daughter that they weren't able to save. One can also argue that maybe the lullaby released or summoned the man in yellow, whose first words were in reference to Jade playing the lullaby.
That Jade sure can play.
It kinda feels like an old trick from the movie and TV show book. So what was even the goal to bring Tabitha to the faraway tree? To release the man in yellow? Just to remember their past life? You know, I think it could have been achieved in a way less complicated manner. But wait, was it even the boy in white's goal that Tabitha would enter the tree? I mean, first time he tried to send Christopher. you know, the previous life of Jade, not Miranda, the previous life of Tabitha. Since the tree will take every person to a different place, as we have seen many times during the show, does it mean that if Jade will enter the tree, he will be taken somewhere else? Maybe he will be sent to the story world and will be given the chance to save the kids. But still, how? I doubt it's by doing some time travel with a shotgun, finding the Anghkoey children kids before they are sacrificed and saying,
"Come with me if you want to live."
Look, we know right now that every story has a threshold moments, where a hero can choose a different path, but after his choice, there is no return.
All I keep thinking about is that this sounds like those stories that you always tell us. If I was a character in one of those stories, what would I do? What would this be?
You're at a threshold. It's always scary, but the hero has to be brave.
And it looks like we had some of those moments already during the 3 seasons.
I really like you, and what's about to happen is gonna save everyone. Just like in one of your stories, you're gonna be the hero.
You know there's no coming back from this, right? You said that you weren't gonna let this place break you. If you do this place is won. You need to decide right now who you are.
We know that the power of prayer by the Anghkoey children created the story world, where their story repeats itself for eternity until the cycle is going to be broken. In this story, there are threshold moments, moments when our heroes need to make a choice that can potentially break the cycle and release the trapped spirits of the Anghkoey children. Jade and Tabitha enter the faraway tree and completely break the cycle, releasing the spirits of Anghkoey children, breaking the curse, and releasing everyone who is trapped in Fromville. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed this theory. I'm pretty sure some of the moments here are very much based, and some of the moments I use my own imagination to fill in the blanks. Now you can support this video and this channel in any shape or form that feels comfortable to you. If it doesn't, just by watching the video you already gave me everything I could have ever asked for you. Everything else is just a very nice bonus. And I usually do this in the beginning of the video, but it didn't feel right for this one, so I want to use this chance to thank everyone who supports me on Patreon and on YouTube, and I want to welcome a new beacon of light, Peter Sobi, thank you so much. I have Osvaldo Rodriguez as champion, guy with the coolest name ever, and I have 2 new motivators. We have Tessa here and we have the Inflatable Man. Thank you so much for joining this small and awesome community. If you're looking for more From content, you'll be able to find it in abundance on this channel. Now, as usual, I want to thank everyone. I'm gonna see you on the next one. Bye!